And my next guest is retired Army Colonel Nancy Brecher. Nancy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, as you know, this show, we always like to have a veteran on to talk about their service and really to recognize our veterans within our community. And we've done a number of things recently to start the Military Banner Program, and I really think we need to continue to look to show our residents what our veterans are doing and what they have done within our community. So I know you come from turns out a military family now. You, your husband, and 3 of your 4 sons have or are serving in various branches of the military, and we'll kind of get into that. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about yourself, where you were born. And
I was born right here in Rockland County, in West Nyack, Van Houten Fields, which I live next door. We built a house. We built it. Back then, you could have farmland. And my father had 2 other acres. And we used to grow crops and, get the big gravely out and turn and we used to plant the corn. That was exciting because that one night I could stay up late to shuck the corn.
Right.
So, and then I had a horse there, which was pretty cool. I went to Clarkstown South. No, it was Clarkstown. Just one Clarkstown. When I came back from college in the military, there was 2. But then it was 1. And then I went to the University of Miami. No, actually, first I went to Vermont College. It was a girls' school. My parents felt I needed a little taming. They thought I was having too much fun. So it was a girls' school at Montpelier, which is now connected with Norwich University, the military school. Maybe that's where my interest started. I don't know. I used to love the parades and everything else. And then I transferred down to the University of Miami for nursing. And before that, I just want to backtrack one thing that I thought was interesting. I was thinking today. I did work here in high school. I don't know if you still hire summer help.
Yeah, we do.
But I worked in the town clerk's office with Ann Smith. I was trying to remember her name.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that was eons ago. But so then I went to college, and in my last year of college, I was looking at my future possibilities. And I was always interested in the military, so I went and talked to recruiters, and the Army seemed to offer what I wanted at the time. I get seasick, so I couldn't do the Navy. But in the Air Force, it was, I probably would get seasick to a point with that, because you have to work with patients while they're flying. So I joined the Army before I graduated, and once I graduated, I became, well, actually 6 months before, I became a 2nd lieutenant, and then I went off to basic training.
Where did you do your basic training at?
Down at Fort Sam, Houston. That's where all of the medical courses are, is down in San Antonio, Texas.
And roughly what year was that?
That was in '69.
Okay.
And I enjoyed basic training. My parents were they weren't overly pleased about me joining. They said, do you know what you're getting in for? And blah, blah, blah. You never stick with anything, and you have to stick with this. And what are the people you're going to be associated with? Blah, blah. So I said, no problem. And I found some of the coolest people I had ever met. I mean, they not only all had the same interest, but they were very gung-ho, and they liked what they were doing. And we spent, it was 2 months back then, in basic training. For officers, it's a lot of classroom, but it's also going out into the field. So my first armadillo, which was pretty exciting, on the compass course, I was chasing the armadillo when I was supposed to be following a course, but we got back on course. And so then after basic training, I got assigned to Fort Carson, Colorado. That's in Colorado Springs. Back then, you got to choose 3 places to go. It was called a dream list. I chose Fitzsimmons, which was in Denver. I chose Presidio, which was in San Francisco, which both are closed by now. And then I chose Walter Reed, which is in Washington. I'm really glad I didn't get any of them, because they were very big hospitals. And as a yearling or a new it's better to be in a smaller hospital because then they need you more as far as not just gut work. So I worked on a general surgical floor and then the emergency room, and then I became the supervisor of the hospital. And back then it was very interesting. I don't know if you want to hear all this stuff, but it was very interesting because the hospitals were built in long sections, miles and miles. I think this one had 22 miles of corridor because they were worried because of World War II and Korea that if you bombed out the hospital, the rest wouldn't be working. But if you bomb out a section, then you can move everybody to another section. Pretty cool. But it was a lot of walking, so they gave us these little motor scooters if we were a supervisor to zip around the halls to go check the different units. So once we were there, I think it was close to 4 years, it was either send her to Vietnam or let her finish her year here. Well, back then that was like 1971, close to 72, and they weren't really sending as many troops now, especially medical, because they were able to evac the medical people quickly to the United States, which is great. Now they evac them to Germany and then to the United States. So I finished up my military, but then I wanted to stay in the military. But it's hard sometimes when you're married to a civilian that can't move his jobs easily. And I didn't think I was married at that point. I didn't think it was really fair to my husband for his career to follow me around camps. So I got into the reserves, plus I wanted to have children. Oh, that's another note. Back then, you couldn't have children in the military. Now they allow it. Now they have maternity uniforms, and they give very nice, I think they give 6 weeks off for you to take care of the infant. So came back to New York. I first joined a unit in Colorado, then in California, and then came back to New York, where we presently preside. Stayed in the reserves the entire time. Was activated sometimes for a month, which to me was like a break, because by then I had 3 or 4 kids. And then I got activated for Desert Storm. They sent me to Walter Reed, preparing us to go over if they needed us. And I stayed there about 9 months. Found it a little insulting at first because they said that we were non-essential. What does that mean? And then when I thought it was time to go, which when they were sending a lot of my unit back, they said, oh, now you're essential. So they can change things easily, which was okay. So I stayed down at Walter Reed, and Mark, my husband, became Mr. Mom. And he did okay. He did okay. Of course, we got him a lot of things. I got him a housekeeper. We had the kids were all in daycare, so he was okay. He just didn't like making sandwiches for the kids for school. But and actually, when I found out I was activated, I came home and I said, and most dads will understand this. I said, "Do you want to know what grade your kids are in? Do you want to know who their teachers are?" Because a lot of times when fathers get involved with their profession, they forget what's going on at home. But so the whole time I was working with the reserves, but also working as a nurse. And after Desert Storm, I came back, and I decided that I wanted to become a nurse practitioner. So I went to Pace University. In between this, I had gone to Adelphi and got another master's, but this was my second master's, and I went to Pace and became a nurse practitioner, which I loved. I did it for 19 years up at West Point. I found that these are the people that I enjoy taking care of. They're very usually polite, and they're very respectful, and they appreciate what you're doing for them. So that was pretty much it. Then they said, you have to leave. It's time.
And major automatic retirement, I guess. I'm mandatory.
Yeah,
retirement.
28 point, whatever, 6 months. That's.
And you rose to the rank of, so you're a Vietnam era veteran, and you rose to the rank of colonel.
Colonel.
So,
They sent me information to go to War College, but I looked at it, first of all, and the kids were all teenagers and younger, and that meant going away again for a while. And also, not that I have anything against generals, but they kind of lose touch with the troops.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're up there. They go around and they give speeches, which they're supposed to do, but they really, and they sign executive orders or whatever they do,
Yeah.
but they kind of lose touch with the troops. And I really enjoyed working with the troops.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how come a couple of reasons. That's why I said no. Now, of course, now all my kids and my husband regret it. Oh, you could have been a general. I didn't need a title. I had enough titles.
And especially, wife, and mom as well. So
Wife, mom,
yeah, right down the
it
list.
was enough.
In the couple of minutes we have left, you really come. We were talking off camera before. Your dad was in the military, but not in combat. He was in between the world wars, and both your husband, who's a Vietnam vet as well,
Correct.
and 3 of your 4 kids. Let's just mention
And my brother, too.
and your brother. So let's go and Dale, who's actually who's on one of our shows as well. So why don't we just go through that real quickly? So your dad was in the Army or the Air Force?
No, they had a pilot thing back in the 20s after World War I. And he became a pilot, but then there was a crash, so he never was able to fulfill. And by then, World War II didn't happen for another 10 years or so.
Right.
And then my brother went in the Marines, stayed in 3 years. He's 8 years. Oop, I shouldn't say it. He's a few years older than me.
Yeah.
And he works now for Humana. He builds houses for
Yeah.
vets, which is pretty cool. And then my husband was in Vietnam for 3 years during the rough time. As a matter of fact, we went back to Vietnam. And I told him, I said, you got to promise me you're not going to tell me all the stories again, because I've heard them many times.
Right.
He goes, no, I won't. But it was changed, and he was quite pleased with the change. He felt even though it was I won't use the word, the war was not popular, it did help a country, even though they're communist, it helped a country rise up a little bit. It really did. And then my oldest son is in the Army. He's out in California. He's with the Civil Affairs Unit. He's kind of reserve and active. He's in between. And then, which by the way, I should mention, the reason why he didn't join active duty, because I asked him, he says, Mom, that would be a commitment.
Right.
And he knew that he couldn't do commitments really well. But he enjoyed it so much that he did go to Afghanistan, he did go to all these different places, and he wishes he had joined the active Army. Then my second son is in the Coast Guard, was in the Army, became a helicopter pilot, but in the Army, after you become a major, they don't have you flying anymore. You pretty much do a desk. You fly. It's a joke. You fly the desk. So he switched over to the Coast Guard. Plus, he was kind of tired of being deployed. He went to Afghanistan, Iraq twice. So he wanted to get married, have a family. Yeah. So he's up in Oregon, a place called Coos Bay, Oregon. And they do search and rescue for all the fishermen. It's pretty cool. Yeah. And then Dane, my third, stayed in Rockland County, and he works for my husband. But the fourth is Dakota. He's in the Navy. He said he wanted to try something different. So he's in the Navy. He was going to be a pilot, but he didn't find that worked for him. So he went over. He's now a C. Navy isn't my thing. I don't know.
CB?
No, he works. He's an officer.
Okay.
So he's now on a cruise control.
Oh, okay.
Cruiser. That's it. Sea cruise. He's going to kill me.
Cruiser. Okay.
But
missile cruise. Guided missile cruiser.
He was in charge of the missiles and so on and so forth. He was in Japan for over a year, and now he just came back, and he's up in Rhode Island, teaching at the New London, is it New London? Newport.
Okay.
Newport School.
Wow. So that's really an impressive. Some families don't have anybody that's ever served, and you have 3 generations here, and virtually everyone. That's really commendable. And
well, I must tell you, I think it was a real shame. I wanted to bring this up. The real shame that we did away with the draft. We could call it something else. We don't have to call it the draft. Could call it community service, anything. But I think parents, which were from my generation, were fearful of the military because of Vietnam. In the military, you don't have to be a front soldier. There's so many other jobs. There's administrative jobs, there's medical jobs, and you can learn a trade and then get out of the military. But it teaches a certain amount of discipline, which I think parents try very hard to give their kids, but they've got so many outside forces of school and so on and so forth. So I think if the young generation could join something, join to work for the poor, to help, just help the community, anything, I think it gives them a sense of camaraderie. The other point I wanted to bring up, because I thought of some big points, is the military helps a lot with prejudices, because there's so many mixtures of people. I mean, we have every mixture in the military, and they all have the same goal. And sometimes they really have a common dislike for the drill sergeant. That's okay.
Yeah.
But they all kind of get along, and they get along well. So it's a way to do away with some of the prejudices. And now, of course, we're dealing with even more. And I do think America is great. And I'm not thinking that we need to change. I mean, we need to change a lot, but America is great.
Oh, absolutely. And you and your husband have been involved in the West Nile community for very many years. The family business, Plasticraft, has been involved for very many years, and I know that Mark and you have been involved with the revitalization efforts down in West Nyack with the committee and a few other things, and also involved with Heritage of West Nyack. So we thank you for you and your family for all your efforts with that as well. Nancy, I want to thank you for being just a wonderful guest. I mean, this has been great. We learned a little bit about you. Our viewers are going to know a lot more about you, from this interview. But again, I just want to reiterate, it's remarkable that so many people in your family have served and are currently serving our country in most of the branches of the military. And I want to thank you for that, and thank you for your service. We appreciate it greatly.
You're welcome. And thank you for making our county, it wasn't just you, but our county a pleasant place to live.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Parks are super.
Thank you. Coming up, next guest will be Deacon John Maloney. Stay tuned.